Hey, this is KT, or Kinetic Theorist, on Twitter. You can give me a follow, and you should also follow MassOps, and that's Mass, M-A-S-S, underscore, Ops, O-P-S. It's been a long week here in the police state of Massachusetts. I would like to just talk about some of the stuff we have upcoming for MassOps, and obviously talk about some of the stuff that's happened this week. Next weekend, Saturday, at 2:30, come join us, or at least watch via live stream. IDP Boston will be at 1 Schroeder Place in Roxbury, Massachusetts. That is the police headquarters. It is also the BRIC, the Fusion Center for the region. Now, the Fusion Center is a excitingly unregulated law enforcement DHS crazy place where, they publish reports on, dangerous terrorists like the Occupy movement. So we're going to go there and hold IDP, the International Day of Privacy event, where we talk about the encroachment of the surveillance state and look at some of the things that the police are doing and violations into the Fourth Amendment. That should be a peaceful demonstration. We do not expect arrests or any confrontation with the police. We're not planning any civil disobedience, but you got to be a little bit wary. This is a very highly policed area. In fact, Roxbury, we had a little run-in earlier this week, myself and another MassOps member, where we went down to poster for IDP because we'd love to get some local folks out there. And we just wanted to raise kind of the community awareness that this is a fusion center, actually, right there in their backyard. And it was a little bit spectacular because the passenger in my car was an anon in a mask, and the police, I guess, saw him step out of my car. Now, I was still in my car, and I wasn't wearing a mask yet because, I was driving. I'd parked by then, but I just hadn't got my mask on yet, so I was getting my stuff together. When suddenly 2 cruisers come up and pin me in, and they jump out of their cruiser, and they're like, start asking us questions, why the mask and all this. But then they explained that they were there because of the mask. We hadn't broken any laws, which begs the question, why were we being detained? Now, I was told, stay in your car and, keep your hands where I can see them and all this stuff. So it was a full-on detention. So the area is full of jumpy police. Now, I'm sympathetic. I am. They're doing their job. They're trying to keep things safe. They just had, obviously, the Boston bombing, and I get that. But on the other hand, if you're detaining people for being too close to someone wearing a mask, things have gone a little awry. Anyway, we peacefully ended that situation with the officers driving off, and we continued to do our postering, and that was good. So, if you do decide to come out, the IDP is going to be, like I said, at 1 Schroeder Place, and what that is right between the Ruggles and Roxbury crossing stops on the Orange Line, so should be pretty easy to get to. But just be wary. Do stay safe. If the police come to question you or talk to you in any way, my counsel to you is don't ever talk to the police. It can only be used against you. Can and will be used against you. That's the phrasing in the Miranda rights, and that's exactly right. A police officer cannot testify on your behalf. It's hearsay if you say, hey, I'm innocent, and then you try to ask them in trial. They're like, oh, that's hearsay. We can't do anything. However, if you're like, yeah, I totally shot that guy right in the face, man. Dude, fuck yeah, he's dead. They'll be like, yeah, well, that was a confession, and it's admissible. Gotta love it. So, like I said, if the police come up to you, you do not have to deal with them. Just explain to them. Just say, I'm not going to answer questions without a lawyer, and I do not consent to any search or seizure, and then just politely decline requests. All right. That is just my advice. Anything you do say to a police officer, you're helping build a case against you. And believe me, there's so many laws that I believe they lost track of how many laws there were, and that made news a little while back. So you don't know whether or not you're breaking any laws. The police officer probably doesn't know, but they could go fishing, and if you're talking to them and you say the wrong thing, man, you just built a case against yourself when one didn't exist previously. So just be wary. Then there's the other thing. we went down to Salem to protest in front of the Salem Superior Court, which is where they held the Cameron D'Ambrosio bail hearing. Now, Cameron D'Ambrosio is facing terrorism charges. He's an 18-year-old, and he's facing 20 years in prison for, well, posting a rap video online. Now, this particular rap video was one that he had written, and it contained, hey, let's see, he called the White House a federal house of horrors, and I kind of agree. Don't tell DHS that. I'm kidding. They watch this. So the White House is a federal house of horrors. Now, that's been taken as him targeting the White House, which is crazy. And then he said, stupidly, expletive bombing in Boston. Wait till you see the expletive I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be a famous rapper and beat all the murder charges that come against me. Yeah, I know, he's an idiot. But being an idiot isn't necessarily criminal, and it's certainly not terrorism. Nobody's really terrorized, I don't think. Now, to be fair, I do take the whole white boy rap thing very seriously. I do think it's criminal. I think that as a culture, we need to crack down on white boy rap, and I know some of you are saying Eminem's pretty good, but we cannot afford another Vanilla Ice. Seriously, though, this kid is on the hook for terrorism, for that. Even the police in Methuen, where this kid's from, said that there was no specific threat, there was no target mentioned or any of that, so I'm hoping that the charges will be dropped. He's been held without bail. This was a bail hearing down in the Superior Court that we went down to on Thursday. Now, there was only two of us again, so we went down. I had a free speech does not equal terrorism, but drones, the NDAA and martial law does, sign, and my friend had a free speech motherfucker sign. Classy. That's how we roll. In any case, we were on the sidewalk, a public sidewalk right next to the road. I mean, within 3.5 feet or whatever of the curb. We weren't blocking anything. We weren't harassing people. We weren't even making noise. We just had these big old signs. And a court officer or security guard came out and said, hey, this sidewalk is court property. You need to go across the street. We have all this on camera, and I'm sure I'll tag the URL for that in the description for this video. But we thought at that point that the Superior Court was down the street, so we told him, hey, yeah, now it's cool, we're going down the street, and whatever, you enjoy your sidewalk or whatever. So we go down the street, and it turns out that everything had been moved back to that one particular building, so we came back, and I guess that's an affront to their authority on their public sidewalk that we can't be on. So this guy comes back out, and he's like, you've already been told you can't be here. And I'm like, well, let me talk to your supervisor. I think you're wrong. This is a public sidewalk. It's clearly a public sidewalk. You can tell where the public sidewalk ends and the public court begins. But I understand there's some probable regulations about whether or not you can protest at a court. So this guy, instead of getting any superior or even really engaging in any sort of conversation with me, just turns around and sends, well, this guy, I guess he's a police officer. He identified himself. He's like, I'm a police officer. And he's like, yeah, you're going to have to move. And I'm like, well, this is clearly a public sidewalk that I have every right to be on. And he's like, yeah, well, maybe. I liked that. Yeah, he's like, you're going to find out what's going to happen. Oh, good. So I asked him for his name and his badge number, and he just turned his back and walked away, and that's on camera. It's an awesome moment. So I didn't want to get arrested. Getting arrested kind of sounds like it would suck. Believe it or not, I've never been arrested, just detained. I don't know. I don't break laws, so, well, there's 40 gajillion or something laws, so maybe I do break laws, and I don't know about it, but I'm not a criminal. How about that? I was like, I don't want to get arrested, and I turned around and went across the street. So I complied with this completely bananas order from a security guard and a officer in highly dubious finger quotes. Across the street, at that point, I started to do an interview with these two guys who'd come out. They're for Fight for Freedom, which is a student law group, and they're doing some cool stuff. One of the things they're doing is working on the case with Cameron. They said that they would give us an update, and so I started recording, and, just right after I started recording, the police just all roll up, and man, we were just surrounded. It was crazy. There was 6 officers, and oh man, this guy comes out and he jumps out and he's all like, "You need to move," and I'm like, "From where to where?" Like, what is this order? You want me to comply with a police order that doesn't make any sense, and you're just barking at me? All right. So what law are you citing? And he's like, "Because I said so." Let's check the law books on that. I'm sure "because I said so" law is right next to the "you're standing too close to a person in a mask" law in the bullshit-o-meter. And so, we had a pretty unproductive thing where he did give me his name and badge number, and that's good. That's right. And he turned around and asked me mine, and I'm like, "I'm not going to tell you. You have no reason to know my name because I'm not committing a crime." And he's like, "Well, you're going to have to show me ID." I'm like, "I will not consent to search or seizure." And since I guess he was asking me to give him his ID, it wouldn't be a search or seizure if I was dumb enough to do that. But again, like I said, don't talk to cops. Don't give them your things. You don't have to. At that point, the sergeant finally stepped in when it was pretty much apparent that we weren't idiots. I think that was the line. We weren't idiots. We were going to actually demand our rights. So the sergeant steps in and kind of gives us this, you have to move every 20 to 30 minutes or whatever, which is also not true on a public sidewalk. And maybe there's a town statute for vagrancy or something, or loitering, I don't know. But that's not going to hold up about a protest. Like, no, we were protesting. Signs. There we were. Besides which, we'd been there for all of 2 seconds because we had just crossed the street after having our hassle with the court guards and the maybe officer. I'm going to call him the maybe officer from now on. That's his new name. There we were. And the sergeant kind of keeps going in. But at this point, we're like, well, the trial's over, man. So we're going to walk down the street. We're going to go. It's cool, right? Are we free? And they kind of confer, and they're like, "Oh, don't go near the court." Whatever. So they leave, and we do the interview. And then, true to form, we start to leave. And this, unfortunately, isn't on camera because, God, I wish it was. The police sergeant comes back after we're done and after we're leaving and says, "Hey, if you film me, you need to notify me and get my consent." Now, first of all, I was already filming an interview, and he just walked the fuck in. Now, second of all, that's bullshit. He is a public servant. He is in public and on duty and whatnot, so I have absolutely every right as a citizen to film him. In fact, if you see something, film something. That's a great saying when it comes to police actions. If you see something, film something. Even if it's not you involved, film it. Because that actually will protect a good officer who follows the law, and it will protect a good citizen if they are following the law. It's never a negative thing. And that's a double negative statement. But it is never a negative thing to have a filmed document of a police interaction. And the Supreme Court has already ruled a handful of times that yes, citizens can actually film you. So he's like, if you do it again, I'm going to take your camera. So the police sergeant is now threatening to steal my things. That's my cell phone, man. So ultimately that went just totally sideways. That's police state crazy at its fullest. And we'll see where that goes from here. I'm sure we're going to talk to some lawyers and probably have further discussions because we'll be back. That's the thing. We will be back. Cameron D'Ambrosio trial will happen, and when that happens, we will go and protest. And we will stay on public sidewalks and all that. We'll do it legally because we don't want to get arrested. At least not meaninglessly. So we will need clarity in the assurances of the police officers that they've been trained properly on how to engage a citizen and how to not be douche nuts. That's what's been going on in the mass ops world. Like I said, busy week, and come in next week. Once again, IDP Boston, the International Day of Privacy, at 1 Schroeder Place in Roxbury, between the Ruggles and Roxbury Crossing stations, right on Tremont Street, which is right off of Mass Ave for you folks out in the area. Please come on down. And if you can't make it to the actual physical event, check it out. We will be live streaming it, so stay tuned and check out the Mass Ops sites for updates. Thank you very much. Be well.